Wise Child by Monica Furlong, Chapter 20, The Trial. The first time they questioned me was in Phelan's house. I was questioned by both Phelan and the Inquisitor from the mainland, an English monk who was called Radman. He was tall, with piercing eyes, and when we stood together, he towered above me. To begin with, he was friendly. "So, this is the little girl," he said. I curtsied, as I had always been taught to do. He sat me directly in front of him on a stool. There were only a couple of feet between us, a distance I found uncomfortable, and I moved the stool back a little until my back was against the wall. This achieved nothing, since he instantly moved farther forward. Phelan sat on one side, where I had to turn my head and see him. "You have lived with Ninnock, commonly known as Juniper," he began. "For how long?" "For over a year, sir." "For over a year, sir." "She clothed and fed you?" "Yes, sir." "Was she kind to you?" "Very kind, sir." "I take it that she expected you to work during that time?" "She did, sir." "What work did you do?" "I cleaned the house. I made cheese and butter. I ground the meal for our bread. I collected eggs. I milked Daisy. I did a bit of spinning and weaving, not much, because I wasn't very good at it." "Weaving? What did you weave?" "Cloth, sir." I sounded as innocent as I knew how. "Cloth for our winter clothes." "What else did you do?" "I weeded the garden. I helped dry the herbs. I chopped them up or grated the roots. I helped make ointments and extract and tinctures, sir." "And these potions, what were they for?" "To make people well, sir. To make them better from skin diseases and dropsy and milk infection and rheumatism and earache and the baby fever and winter sickness and measles." "Very laudable, I am sure. What about the other uses of these herbs?" "What other uses, sir?"
"Uses for spells, to make people fall ill instead of better, to give them smallpox, say, or make their cattle sick, or their crops mildew, or maybe to make people fall in love."
"Juniper didn't do things like that, sir. She wanted to help people. She was kind." There was a long silence between us, and the Inquisitor started on another tack.
"You think of yourself as a Christian, child?"
"Of course."
"You go to Mass?"
"I did until lately."
"And what prevented you then?"
Phelan Priest was saying things about Juniper.
"So Juniper would not let you go?"
"I did not want to hear him say things like that."
"You know that you were very wrong to cut yourself off from the source of grace."
I did not answer,
and he said at length, "Well?"
"If you say so, sir."
"But you don't agree with me?"
"I am glad of the grace, sir, but I do not like to hear Juniper criticized."
"Very well. But you would agree that Juniper is not a Christian?"
"I do not know, sir."
"She did not go to Mass, did she?"
"No, sir, but she spoke well of the Lord and told me to emulate him." The Inquisitor's eyelids flickered, I thought, with annoyance.
"Did she ever speak of another Lord?"
"What other Lord, sir?"
"Of another Lord whom she worshipped?"
"No, sir."
"Phelan tells me that she gave you lessons. On what subjects?"
"Latin, English, the language they speak in Cornwall and in Brittany, poetry, philosophy, astronomy, mathematics, especially geometry, herbal lore."
"Spells?"
"No, no spells, sir. I once taught her a spell, a charm, really, that a boy in the village had taught me for a toothache, and she thought it very funny." The Inquisitor moved a little restlessly in his chair, and I guessed that whereas he had begun by thinking a little girl would be easy to question, he had started to think it might be more difficult. I felt a tiny bit triumphant, though I knew I must be on my guard.
"That will do for now," he said to Phelan. "Keep her locked up, and I will question her again tomorrow."
As I rose thankfully to my feet and began to cross the room to the door, he threw a sudden question at me.
"Did you ever see Juniper fly?"
"Never, sir," I said truthfully. I spent that night locked in a room in Phelan's house. If I craned my neck out of the window, I could see the lock-up where Juniper must be kept. I sent a message to her in my mind, and it seemed as if the message of love came back from her. I was tired, and I slept well, as if I was refusing to think about being a prisoner for the time being. When I next saw the Inquisitor, at about 9 in the morning, I felt rosy and well. By concentrating on each moment as it happened, something I suddenly realized I had learned from Juniper, I could keep myself from gnawing anxiety. Today the Inquisitor talked to me by himself, and he took a different tack.
"You must love Juniper very much,"
he said. I was so surprised by this I did not reply immediately. Finally I said, "She has been very good to me, sir."
You were very lucky that she took you in and cared for you when you were homeless.
It was what Finbar wanted, I said primly.
Quite so, but to find yourself in a good home with plenty to eat, that was lucky, was it not?
I did not answer, though I was not sure why. I did not trust him.
She treated you well, did she not? So you must love her very much.
My face set into one of its obstinate, sulky looks. He could never know of the life between me and Juniper, of the laughter and the gentleness, of the times I had sat on her lap, the times she had sung to me and told me stories and taught me things my hungry mind wanted to know. What did all that have to do with this huge monk? I knew only that he wanted to hurt Juniper. The questioning went on for most of that day, with breaks for meals. He asked who Juniper's friends were, where she went on her travels, whether I ever visited the caves under the White House, whether I had been to ceremonies with her in which we worshipped the devil. I pretended to have forgotten the names of her friends, or not to have known them, and the other questions I could reply truthfully to.
Is it true that she would not let you return to your natural mother?
The Inquisitor asked. Reaching through the strands of our long conversation, I detected, with a stirring dread, the presence of Maeve. She may be my mother, but she is not a good person, I said, sounding very proper. She is not a Christian, and I prefer to live with Juniper. She is not kind nor a Christian, and I prefer to live with Juniper. At last the long day came to a close. I was locked in my bedroom, and I could hear Fillon and the Inquisitor talking and laughing down below as they ate their dinner. I was tired, but now it was hard to sleep. I kept going over and over the conversation to make sure that I had said nothing that could harm Juniper. I got out of bed more than once to look at the little jail and to try to communicate with Juniper. I took the talisman and held it in my hand as I tried to go to sleep. When at last I did sleep, I had bad dreams, and I was brusquely awakened by Fillon shaking me.
The Inquisitor wants to talk to you.
I threw a blanket around my shift and descended barefoot to the living room. The fire had died down, and I felt very cold. With a painful shock, I realized I had left the talisman behind in the bedroom.
Juniper's friends, the Inquisitor began. What are their names?
I never knew their proper names.
They were known by titles. What sort of titles? Tell us one or two of them.
They were known by nicknames, as I am and as Juniper is.
What nicknames?
I rapidly invented one or two names.
The child has not taken an oath, Fillon interrupted at this point. She is old enough to do so.
A Bible was brought, and I was made to swear upon it.
You understand, child, Fillon said to me. If you say something that is untrue after swearing, your soul is in mortal danger.
I nodded, scared.
Now, child, what are the names of Juniper's friends?
It was an appalling choice between damnation and my love for Juniper, but I did not want to tell a lie, but I could not give them evidence that would let them burn Juniper or persecute her friends. I thought of a way out of my dilemma, which was the one day I would confess my lies and so escape damnation. I repeated the nicknames I had invented. The two interrogators looked disappointed. Having lied once, it was easy to lie again. I lied in answer to a question whether I had seen anything magic happen in Juniper's house. I lied when asked whether I myself had ever flown. I lied when I was asked about substances and drinks that made you feel at one with nature. I knew that these were secrets that their minds would desecrate and destroy. The questioning became more severe.
Why did you stop attending Mass? Fillon asked.
Because you preached against Juniper and made everyone hate us, I said pertly.
Mind your tongue, child, he said. Juniper told you, didn't she, that the religion of Jesus was wrong, and that you must give it up and worship someone else?
No, she encouraged me to go to church and worship God.
So Juniper was a Christian?
I don't think so, but she liked the Christians, well, some of them.
Describe your life with her.
I was growing weary of the whole subject. I went over it again, the domestic life, the herbs, the lessons.
Why should she teach a young girl like you all those difficult subjects, when all that you need to marry and have children is a little cooking and spinning and sewing?
She thinks that girls can do all the things boys can do if they try, and that they may not wish to marry.
The Inquisitor's face darkened in fury. And what will you do with all this learning? He asked scornfully.
I was stung by his contempt. Become a Doran! I retorted scornfully. As soon as I had said it, I knew my mistake. A long silence hung between us.
A Doran!
the Inquisitor repeated thoughtfully, and I could hear Phelan behind me give a small ah of satisfaction.
Now will you tell us exactly what that is?
Slowly, painfully, they drew my dark secret from me. I had been so proud of my lying and my cleverness, and then in a moment I had condemned the person I loved most in the world. Juniper's trial took place in the church, the only building big enough to hold all the people in the village. I went to it with a heavy heart, knowing that they would use my evidence against Juniper. Yet at least I would see her, would be able to see if she was all right. I did not dare think of what the end might be. They had cleared away the usual benches on which the older people sat, and put them in a ring around the nave, with some more chairs that reminded me of a bear-baiting ring I had seen on my journey with Juniper. I had a seat apart from the villagers, so I could not talk to them. My eyes sought Coleman in the crowd, and I exchanged glances with him. His grave, sweet expression was immensely comforting at a moment when I needed comfort. Juniper came in from the side entrance of the church. She was thin and drawn-looking, but her eyes were alight. She moved easily, and when I dared to look at her, she smiled at me as lovingly as ever. Did she not know the use they had put me to? The Inquisitor started gently, politely. It struck me that he was trying to get the people onto his side.
Your name is Ninok, commonly known as Juniper?
Yes.
It is alleged that you are guilty of acts of witchcraft, that you did bring murrain upon the corn of one Dougal of the village, that you did bewitch one Fingal so that he believed himself in love, and that you did afflict Gil with the smallpox.
So smallpox had reached the village at last. Juniper again briefly exchanged glances with me, and with the movement of an eyelid so faint that no one but me would have known what it was, I knew that she had winked at me. I cheered up at once, sat up straighter, and determined that somehow or other she and I would survive this experience, or at any rate die with what dignity we could manage. Radman began calling witnesses to make the case against Juniper. Dougal came first. He was the one whom Juniper had once described to me as Phelan's dog. Dougal haunted the church, was always at mass, praying loudly, always agreed with every word Phelan spoke. It was not difficult to guess how he had been persuaded to give evidence. Fingal was a poor creature who had once asked Juniper's advice about why no women loved him. He had wanted her to give him a potion that he could put into the drink of Margaret, the girl he fancied. Juniper had said that that was no good, that people must love you of their own accord or not at all. As for Gil, no one seemed able to prove how Juniper might have given him the smallpox. It struck me that apart from my own evidence, there was little on which to convict her. Obviously, though, God knew what suffering she had refused to confess. And we will pause there.